Hello, in this video let us solve an absolute value equation. So here is an example. Let's suppose we have to solve 3 plus absolute value 2x minus 1 equals to 8. So it is an equation because it has equal sign. It is absolute value equation because it has absolute value symbols. And when we solve equations like these, we oftentimes follow a two-step process. The first step is to solve for the absolute value symbol itself. So we pretend that the absolute value is what we're looking for and we get it by itself. So here on our equation, we have on the left side, we have absolute value and also plus 3. So the first thing is to get absolute value by itself, meaning get rid of the plus 3. And to cancel plus 3, the opposite of the plus 3 is the minus. So we minus 3 from both sides, like this. Minus 3, minus 3. And that makes absolute value 2x minus 1 is 5. And that's the first step. That's the end. Now the second step involves splitting our equation, absolute value equation, into two parts. The first part is just like our original equation with the same signs but no absolute value. So the first is just like it is, no absolute value. The second side is exactly the same but the opposite sign on the 5. So where we have equal sign, that will have opposite value, opposite sign. So here are the two different equations that we solve. We solve them differently and separately, and once we get the solution to each, that's the whole answer. So solving the first, add 1 to both sides, we get 2x is 6. To cancel multiplication, divide by 2, x is 3. For the second half, 2x, we add 1 to both sides, and that makes negative 4. To cancel multiplying by 2, we divide both sides by 2, and that makes negative 2. So negative 2 and 3 are the two solutions to our absolute value inequality. So this question has these two solutions, and that's all there is to it. Now if we wanted to use a calculator, we could make a sketch. We could actually make a sketch of the left side. That would be absolute value. Absolute values look like a V shape, like that. So we will see the V shape, and then the right side is going to be the, so here, let me make a little bit better sketch here for our diagram, and then we will do it with a calculator. So it would be coordinate axis, we'll have the V shape like this, that's the left side. Then we're going to have the y equals 8 running through the 8, and the place where the two lines crossed would be our solution. One will come out to be negative 2, just like we said, and the other one will come out to be positive 3, just like we said. So let's have a look at that and convince ourselves that it actually is so. So here is 3 plus, now the absolute value is located under the math here, under the math. So we hit math, the NUM stands for numbers, and the first choice ABS, that's actually absolute value. So enter, and then type in what's inside, which is 2x minus 1, and then on the other side we have 8. So here is the absolute value, looks like a V shape, and here is the 8 coming through it, and we're looking for the place where the two of them intersected. So going to calculate, second calculate, we look for the intersect, and let's move the cursor to the left side first, enter, enter, and one more time. The guess is -2. So the answer is -2, is being confirmed. That's right here, we found it. Then we do the same steps again, calculate, intersect, and this time we move the cursor to a little bit closer to the right, and we hit enter to confirm, and one more time enter. We got the intersect is 3, so here the answer is 3, and that confirms our solution. Focus. That confirms our solution here. So with the calculator we solve both the -2 and the 3, just as we expected from this diagram that we sketched. And that's it for this video. Now at this point, if anybody wanted to have a little bit further discussion on to why this process of splitting into two separate equations works, let's have a quick talk about that and see if perhaps we can convince ourselves that this procedure actually makes sense. So what is absolute value? Absolute value of any number. Absolute value of a number, let's have it here. Absolute value of a number is the distance from that number to 0. So on the axis, when we asked ourselves, here is something absolute value that has to be equal to 5. Well, what we meant by this is there is 0 somewhere, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 units from it is our answer. So we asked ourselves, how can this distance be equal to 5? But on the other side, -1, -2, -3, -4, -5, this distance also happens to be 5 units from 0, because the distance is always a positive quantity. So whether the units are to the right or to the left, the distance is regardless equals to +5. So when we are solving our absolute value equation, we have to remember that we are looking so what that means is absolute value of -5 is 5, and absolute value of 5 is also 5, because the distance, whether the point is on the left or on the right, the distance is 5 regardless. So when we are solving this equation, we have to figure out how can this inside be 5, because if it is 5, then if it is equal to 5, then I'm here, and that would be the correct solution. And that's what we found here when we used +5. So if the x happens to be 3, then 2 times 3 minus 1 happens to be 6 minus 1, which is 5. So absolute value of 5 is really 5, and that is what this answer shows. On the other hand, if the inside happens to be -5, then absolute value of -5 is also 5. So we have to count for that possibility as well. And so in the second equation, we asked, what if the inside is -5? Well, if it's -5, then the answer should be -2. Well, what does it mean? So here is 2, and if we plug in our answer, -2 minus 1, is that equal to 5? Well, 2 times -2 is -4, minus 1, is that equal to 5? Well, -4 minus 1 is -5, and absolute value of -5 is really 5, so that is true statement. So that is why when we solve, we have to remember both the positive and the negative, because both of them will, once you take absolute value of positive and negative, the answer will be positive. And that's why we follow this procedure. In a different video, let's practice solving a different absolute value equation. Sometimes there may be no solution, and let's discuss that. Thanks.